Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday morning, everyone. It's that time. I'm just getting my face on and my head on. So, adjusting lights here so it's not so god awful bright. There we go. Hey, good morning. How is everyone? Let's see who's over there in the chat room this morning. Oh, here. I'm just opening things I didn't mean to open. There we go. Good morning, Audrey. It's nice and early out there on the left coast. 7 a.m. Nice to see you up and around that early. Or are you still up after your little adventure yesterday? Let's see. Susie Q, good to see you. And Teresa, nice to see you here this morning. And I see you all have a nice little conversation going on already over there. TC, nice to see you this morning. And Baroness, January, good morning to you. And I will say, Baroness January, it's nice that you are now Baroness February, going on to Baroness March, because it's nice. It's starting to get that slightly mild warm up here in the Great White North, and I am hoping that we have a much earlier spring than not. So, Kelly, good to see you this morning. Rockin' Rhonda, nice to see you. And Jessica, nice to see you here. And Richie, always good to see you, Richie. Take a slug of coffee here. Ah. All right. Looks like there are some other people going live right now out of the norm. So we'll see what we do this morning. And you can always, this is always fun to go live. You can always catch it in an archive if you miss it here. This is not my official radio show, just so you know. Monday through Friday, I'm over at Odyssey Radio and simulcast here on the YouTube stream. Sunday morning, it's just us. So it's just here being live, interacting with all of you. So good to see you here. Nice to have you. And, you know, I think about the way people act sometimes. As most of you know, I've written a few books, and I've got one book that's got pretty long legs, and that's my book on the Nephilim. And I got an interesting email response from somebody just last night. Came in actually 6:10 p.m., 14 hours ago, on this book of mine that was released in 2012. And it still has some good legs, the book itself, in that it's still doing okay as a book that was published 8 years ago. 8 years ago this month, as a matter of fact. And hey, Matt, how you doing? So I wanted to share this with you. I'm not going to say who wrote it because I'm not sure if they want their name put to it publicly. And it starts off like this. I got 2 emails from him yesterday. Let's see if this is actually the first one. This came at 6:10 p.m. and the other one came at 6:29. Okay, so I'm going to read you the 6:10 email. Now, all of you who've heard me speak, you've heard me talk, you've heard me pontificate, opine. Many of you have seen my books or at least heard me read the books here online. And if you want to do that, you can go onto my YouTube page here. Just go down into all the videos and you'll see all the books where I've read them in their entirety, chapter by chapter. And we did that as a live stream, as a matter of fact. So you'll see the chats in there. Now, you can't type anything in the chats. The chats are just archived with the video as they came. But here's the email I got last night. It starts off and it says man, period. And a man is not capitalized. So I actually thought there was more to the thought that got cut off, or he just didn't capitalize. It says, man, reading your insults about Sitchin, that's Zechariah Sitchin, is nauseating. Where were you in the 1949s when he started his work? Or 1976 when the 12th Planet was published and he broke open new ground. How time has evolved our understanding of these ancient texts and word meaning can be just that. But that you demean Sitchin speaks a lot about who you are. Jealous, ungrateful, totally disrespectful. I wouldn't read another word of yours. You're selfish, and ignorance, as always, follows someone of your immaturity who seeks to destroy the amazing reputation of a truly honorable man. You wouldn't have a page to write if not for him. So, how does that feel? That's what you were doing to a great man whose shoes you will never walk in. All right, that's the first email I got from this fellow yesterday. I think it's a guy. Pretty sure. He's got a weird name. Shanti. Let's leave it at that. Shanti is his name. So that was the first email that he wrote to me. He didn't question me on any of my content. He just took me to task, or tried to take me to task, for my taking Sitchin to task. And I think I might review very quickly. I might go in and read what I said about Sitchin, just so you have an idea of what I actually said. Now, his follow-up email came about 15 minutes later, and he writes this last night. Stunned, truly nauseous. You are the most arrogant, self-righteous little boy bully I've ever encountered in 68 years of reading. That New Page Books published your book, bad. You are a very disgusting person, tearing down Zechariah Sitchin's lifetime of dedication and work so you can elevate your tiny reinterpretations of me and Moo, trample over Sitchin's hypothesis, to correct him in all caps, and tell us all about how smart you are and how misguided he was. How dare you? The hypothesis I put forward is how utterly disgusting you are. Pray your fellow researchers rip one on you. Rip one to you. I don't know if he was talking about farting or tearing me to shreds. I don't care what you have to say after page 59. The only thing useful about your book is as paper for a bonfire. And I wrote him back and I said, thanks for making it to page 59. Cheers. And then I saw his first email second, and so I responded to that. And I said, whoa there, buckaroo. I wasn't attempting to dismantle Sitchin piece by piece. I said he used faulty linguistics, and that was based on my 35 years of research. But hey, thank you for taking the time to write. Cheers, Scotty. So this is what I got. Now, let's see. I've got the book here. Let's look at page 59. I'm curious what page 59 says, that he had to stop there. Page 59, I was talking about the chapter is the Pharaoh God of Israel. And I was talking about Sargon the Great and Osiris and Romulus and Remus. As you can see there, I've even got a picture of the statue of Romulus and Remus and the wolf that raised them. And this had nothing to do with Sitchin here. But I want to find the spot where I talk about Sitchin. And if you didn't read past 59, I know it's earlier in the book, but let me just see if there is a place in my bibliography in the back, or index, that talks about Zechariah Sitchin. Let's see. SSSI. No, I don't even have him referenced. I made such a vague reference to Sitchin that I've got to see where exactly it was I wrote about him. So, as you can see, there are some people who look at my writing and they don't like the conclusions that I drew. And they don't like to ask me questions, but they would rather that they would rather come in and try to tear me down personally, as opposed to. And I will tell you this: I didn't go out to tear down Zechariah Sitchin. As a matter of fact, in my book here, I said that I thought he had a pretty good grasp on things. I said, but he tried to squeeze too many round pegs into much smaller square holes, or the vice versa, square pegs into round holes. And that I felt that his lack of scholarship on linguistics was something that could take away from what he brought to the table. Let's see. I don't think it's in the first chapter. It's got to be in chapter 2. And I'll see here. I'll page through this and see if I can find it. I've got it digitally, but I don't think I have it on this computer digitally. So be a little hard to look it up. But what I remember that I said about Sitchin was that he made a statement that the Anunnaki were children of the fiery rockets that came down out of the sky. And what he was interpreting as fiery rockets was the ancient Sumerian word or Mesopotamian word mu, M-U, the mu, which is, and he used that to define the nose cone of a rocket, the spherical shape of a rocket. Well, the mu, that word translated was mu, meant the firmament, the curved firmament, the heavens above you, the sky. And so mu had a definitive definition. Mu was the sky, the heavens, the curvature of the atmosphere. And Sitchin took that to mean the curved nose cone of rocket ships that brought the Anunnaki to Earth. Now, I said in the book, I said either he knew this and chose to use the word the way he wanted to use it, or he overlooked its translation and did not do his homework on this translation. And the interesting thing is that there is an ancient lexicon that exists dating back 4,000 years. There is a lexicon of different languages in the Euphrates River Valley and in Mesopotamia and other languages of the day, where they show certain words and how they all translate into the different cultures. Very interesting tool and very handy tool when you're trying to break down the meanings of certain old words. And in that, mu is defined as being the firmament, the heavens, not defined as the nose cone of any kind of vessel or ship or anything like that. And so I wanted to take him to task a little bit on that. Now, let me see if I've got to see if I've got some footnotes here. The bibliography. Let's see what that has to say. No, it's not in the bibliography. Let's look at chapter 2. Let's see. I want to see where I have got some things that are mentioned here. Chapter by chapter, notes on Gilgamesh. See, these are my chapter to chapter notes. You can't really read it, but every chapter has its footnotes. And I've got to see if I footnoted his work in here and see what exactly I had to say so I could read it for you. I wanted to see if I had either him or if you've read any of the works of Heiser. Heiser is going to be he's got a website, I think, called Zechariah Sitchin is Wrong. Now, Heiser is a Hebrew scholar, and he went through and broke a lot of this down. Let's see. It couldn't be in the later chapters because those go a lot further than page 59. So page 59, it would have had to have been in chapter 2. And so give me a second here while I kind of talk, while I'm kind of looking to see who these guys were. And chapter 2 is Who's Your Daddy? From Elohim to Nephilim. And so I think it would be in that chapter where I spoke about this. And let's see here. Who are the sons of God? The sons of God. We've got source of the word Nephilim. Let's see. Language. The definition of Elohim. I think this might be interesting. Did you know Elohim is the name for God that's used almost 3,000 times in the Old Testament? And the literal translation of the word Elohim is God of many gods, or more simply, God of gods. But to render this as wholly polytheistic term would fly in the face of how Judaism's staunchest scholars would interpret the word. No higher authority on the Hebrew language could be found than the great Hebrew scholar William Genesius. He wrote that the plural nature of Elohim was for the purpose of intensification and was related to the plural of majesty and used for amplification. Genesius states that the language has entirely rejected the notion of a numerical plurality in Elohim, whether it denotes one God or not, and is proved especially by its being almost invariably joined with a singular attribute. Let's see. But I, of course, disagree with that, and I go to other scholars that say that's not what the word Elohim means. It's a debated word. And so I think somewhere in here, I've got to be getting into linguistics because I jump into the linguistics. I even add in here when I am looking at stuff. I don't know if you can see this, where it is, but where I talk about Elohim, I will even use the Hebrew right here. If you see, I've put the Hebrew words in so you can break down the Hebrew and you can see. So let's see, God among many gods. I want to find this little passage on Sitchin. So I'm not seeing it there. Science Almighty was chapter 1. But I don't see that. I don't think I got into Sitchin in that chapter. I'll have to look it up and find out where it is I mentioned him. I'm thinking it had to be chapter 2 because that's where I get into some of that. And if this guy only read to page 59, he couldn't have gotten much further past chapter 2 and into part of chapter 3 in order to find that passage. So anyway, there we go. I'm going to see if I'm looking at my chapter by chapter notes here. James Randi, blah, blah, blah. Michael Shermer, I quoted. Skeptic Magazine, chapter 3, Polybius, Raphael Patai, Fielder David, G.A. Wainwright, the Pyramid Texts, the Coffin Texts, Irenaeus, George Smith, the Epic of Gilgamesh, all of that. And I don't see anything else. I know it's in here. And I know that unless he's talking about my other book on the reptilians, which is highly possible. Hang on a second here. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Do I have one here? I don't think I have one handy. I've got one in Chinese. There's one in Spanish, but I can't read Spanish. But I don't have the book. It might be in my my book on the reptilians, which I don't have in front of me, and I don't know where I have a copy of that. I think I'm out of those. Well, suffice it to say, when I was talking about Zecharia Sitchin, I said I believe that he's onto something. I even used those words. But that onto something doesn't mean that he was right about everything. I think he misinterpreted his Hebrew, and that's all I did in the book. And I said, how trustworthy is a guy's notion or his theory if when he's digging into the linguistics, he doesn't look at the way it's supposed to be interpreted and use that? How trustworthy is the rest of what he has to say? And if you hear children screaming, that's what they normally do. Children screaming while I'm on live radio. That's beautiful. So, what's that? Well, she's not supposed to. Just tell her dad said she's not supposed to wear those in the house. Daddy, close the door, please. My 5-year-old constantly, she'll listen to what we have to say as parents, but then just like, okay, thank you for your suggestions. And she goes on and does her own thing. I've told her not to wear rollerblades in the house on the carpet. No good can come from that. And yet she's out there doing it. And so the other child feels it's necessary to come and tell me while I'm on the radio that, or a live stream, that the other child is disobeying, misbehaving. So there you go. So anyway, Zechariah Sitchin, I don't know what you think of him. He's got a lot of work out there. He did a lot of writing. I don't think he's off on everything he has to say. I think he was off on his linguistics. But can you trust someone who misinterprets language in order to make his point? And that, for me, was a big problem. So, oh, and by the way, I just saw a message from Heather over in Scotland. I'm on the big screen. How you doing, Heather? Good to see you over there in Scotland. I should be wearing my kilt now, I feel. So I somehow feel now woefully underdressed for Heather White over in Glasgow. So there you go about Sitchin. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he was. I think he was unwittingly misleading in certain things because he did not do some of his scholarly work well. And a lot of these books, when you think about it, a lot of these books that deal with Nephilim and reptilians and all of these weird things, a lot of them fall back on what these guys think and what they believe and how they interpret things. And interpretation sometimes is okay. You have to interpret things. But you can't reinterpret language to mean what you want it to mean in order to make your big round peg fit into your tiny square hole. So that's what I think Sitchin did in many cases. So read his books with a grain of salt and knowing he's off on his interpretations. He's off on translations. And when you get there, you got a problem. Well, that's one guy felt I was arrogant and stupid for what I had to say about it. So I wish I could find the passage in the book, but there it is. So let me say good morning to some of you who've come in. Lucky Stone, good to see you. You said your wife is Thai, and there was an issue with a Muslim from Indonesia traveling around Thailand. Oh boy. Don't know what that's all about, but Sitchin would probably change some of his theories with the light of current information. Very true, Lucky. Information evolves, or maybe he was stuck in his own theories. I think it's one of those two things. The thing about Sitchin is when he was writing this, that lexicon, ancient lexicon, existed and was already being referred to. So it was something he missed along the way. He was close in his interpretation. He said the word mu meant the curvature of a nose cone of a rocket. Well, the problem with that is that that's not what it means. It meant the curvature of the atmosphere. So you can see how he may have taken the interpretation of that word and used it, or the translation of that word, and thought he could make it fit for his theory on the fiery rockets. And of course, he bases that on other things that he kind of groups them all together. So I don't think he was totally off, but I don't think he was totally right either. That was the only point I was making in the book. So let's see, moving on. Electra, good to see you here this morning. I don't know what you're not allowed to do. I saw that. Oh, donuts. You can't have donuts. Oh, one of the downsides of chemo, I suppose, huh? As if it doesn't have its downside that's supposed to be an upside anyway. Hope you're doing well with all that, by the way. Let's see. Matt Finn, good to see you. Yeah, he probably read headline news and thinks he's an expert on everything. That's very possible. And I'm certainly not an expert on anything. I draw information from other sources or from academics who spent a lot more time on this. Look up Michael S. Heiser and look at his site, Zechariah Sitchin is wrong, or sitchiniswrong.com or .org. I don't know which it is. And he specifically set out, not being mean or mean-spirited, he set out to take a look at the collection of Sitchin's work and say, if you guys are believing this stuff, here is the alternative in the actual Hebrew. in the languages, the Hebrew, the Sumerian, the Mesopotamian. These are the languages, and let's take another look at this. And he says Sitchin's flat out wrong because he misinterprets the languages or mistranslates the languages from the get-go. Yes, little tiny person? Okay, you guys make stuff. Mom is upstairs. I'm doing radio. I told you I'm doing radio. I think that's probably a bad call. You make some toast, and when I'm done here, when Mom comes down, one of us will make a big breakfast. Being live on air doesn't mean anything to my kids, as many times as I have talked about that. So, let's see. KT Emma, good to see you, Kay. Glad you're here today. Let's see. Who else we got? We got a bunch of you in here. If I missed you, it's only because I don't scroll backwards well and catch things. So there you go. Thanks for being here, everybody. I appreciate it. And let me take a swig of coffee. So in all of this stuff, I just have to say, if you're building a theory based or on something historical, and yet either ignore or miss the historical language, you're missing out on something. That is like, and I've talked about this before, and I certainly talked about it when I read about it. That's like interpreting languages and phrases used in the Old Testament and what they actually mean. What does the word mean when you're looking at something? I think that means a great deal. What the actual meaning of the word is, not how we would use it today, but also the context of the word, how the people would have understood that word's meaning back in the day it was written and being used. You also have to look at the antecedents to the word and what the word's context is within the text that was written in ancient times. You also have to understand how people would have understood the entire context of what you're talking about. So the study of something that was said or written in ancient times relies very heavily on taking time to research and understand what people in that day would have understood that to mean, what the actual words mean, what the linguistics are saying. And so that to me is a very important thing. Ron, how you doing? I see your name being mentioned. Ron Frisbee, good to see you this morning. And so all of these things count, and all of these things matter when you're looking at an ancient text and trying to figure out what it said. And then you also have to determine whether or not it's speaking of myth or mysteries or an allegorical tale. You've got to understand what it has to say. Now, many times, even with the Bible, I think it's speaking of something in the mystery sense. And it's not giving us factual information. It's giving us information based on the context of stories that people would have believed. Now, I started to mention something I've talked about before when it comes to language. When you look at the whole, and some of you might recognize this right away as I start talking about it, remember Moses and the burning bush story. Remember, it says that Moses encountered this burning bush, and it was God in the form of a burning bush to show his majesty, to probably cast a little fear. And there's Moses, and the voice is, "Take your sandals off your feet, from the place whereon you stand is holy ground." And he speaks to God, and God speaks to him through the burning bush. Hey, Patch, good to see you. Welcome this morning. And over in the chat room. And so here's the point where I want to make a point about linguistics. In the passage, remember, Moses leans in kind of, and after God gives him all the commands he wants him to do, chops down all of Moses' excuses where he says, "I'm slow of speech. I don't know how to talk in front of anybody. How can I go to the Pharaoh of Egypt?" And God, pretty much cancels that all out and says, "You're going, dude." He said, "Who made man's mouth? I did." He says, "I will tell you what to say. I'll even appoint your brother to speak for you if you need him to." And so Moses finally leans in and he says, "Whom shall I say sent me?" And what was God's answer? God's answer was, "You tell them I am sent you. I am that I am." And when he said, "I am that I am," the antecedents there is what you have to, I am that I am they speak of. That's the unspoken part of that. That I am, the great I am that the people used because they didn't know God's secret name. They called him the great I am. He says, I am that I am. That's me, that the people speak of. Now, there's an interesting, it's not a theory, it's an interesting idea buried in all of this. And we kind of hit on this the other day in the radio show. I was talking about with the jinn and the shaman who had his conversation with the jinn, which, by the way, tomorrow night's show, we're going to finish that whole conversation. It's very interesting. But he said he asked the jinn's name. And he said, in a way, he tricked him into giving him his name. And the jinn gave him his name. And there is this ancient spiritual, do you want to call it a law, that if you know the name of a deity or of a being, a spirit being like that, you can have power over it. And I brought up the example of the old Rumpelstiltskin fairy tale, where people didn't know his name, and not until they could speak his name did somebody have power over him. That's the same concept. Now, look at it this way. In the Ten Commandments, as basic as the Ten Commandments, this principle is there. Remember when it says, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for whosoever does so will not be held guiltless. Now, that's the way it was interpreted in 1611, Shakespearean English under James I, the King James Bible. And by the way, another slight small rabbit trail, all the people who are like King James only, that's the only version you're supposed to use. That is no offense to anybody, but that's kind of silly. That's like saying the only version of any text at all that we're supposed to use is the one written in 1600s using archaic English. The King James Bible is archaic language. Yeah, it's poetic. It sounds nice. Reads a little like Shakespeare sometime, though not as complex. But why would I want to teach anything in Shakespearean English other than Shakespeare if I'm dealing with modern day issues? You update that language. Now, you could update Shakespeare and it'd be pretty boring at times. They've done it in the movies and things like that. But the Bible itself, written in the King James, it was current language of the day when that was written. We've got current language now, 400 years later, that's very different. So I don't think the Bible needs to be read in the King James Version. You're just reading archaic English. So the Ten Commandments, when you update that language in the Ten Commandments, that commandment was saying this. This is in the vernacular, and this is a bit exploded or expanded. It's basically saying, do not use the name, the private name in the Hebrew, the name, the implicit name of God for vain or self-fulfilling purposes. So, in other words, the commandment is saying, don't use the private name of God to uplift yourself, make yourself look better, and use it for your own purposes. Because whosoever does this will not be held guiltless for doing it. So, in other words, that commandment is saying don't use the name of God, the private name of God, for your own purposes, to uplift yourself, to use God in a bad way. Because if you do that, you won't be guiltless. So there's the expansion on that. So now let's shift back to the burning bush. What do you got when Moses leans in and he says to God, what's your name? He's saying, whom shall I say sent me? In other words, he's asking God, what's your name? And you can almost see God saying, it's none of your goddamn business what my name is. You tell them I am sent you. I am that I am. So he wasn't going to reveal his private name to Moses. And so that's the first interesting point out of the burning bush, is that Moses was attempting to find out the private name of the deity. Now, keep in mind, Moses wasn't a Christian. Moses wasn't even Jewish, because Judaism did not exist until he codified it over the next 40 years after the Exodus. There was a Hebraic way of thinking, a rather pre-Judaic way of belief, that the people of Israel in Egypt, they were not Jews because Judaism did not exist. They were Canaanites who were of the family of Israel. And Moses took what they believed and codified it into Judaism later. But what they believed, remember Moses, born as an Israelite, raised as an Egyptian, raised in the palace, raised in the schools of the nobles, raised in all these other religions around him. If you look at Genesis, the creation of the world, you look at Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, that was a retelling of the story of the Mesopotamian story of the Anunnaki, Elil, who conscribed his brother god Enki to create primordial man to do their work for them, to till their ground, and he placed them in paradise. And then they fell when they sought how to release themselves from the bondage to the gods. Very similar stories you'll find. Moses knew these stories when he wrote all of this stuff. So now here's Moses, 40 years separate from Egypt. He left Egypt, fled Egypt 40 years earlier, according to the biblical story. And who knows if that's even accurate. 40 is the number of judgment. And they've divided Moses' life into 40 years of three. First 40 in Egypt, second 40 in Midian, tending sheep, third 40 as the Exodus and the rest of his life wandering in the wilderness during the conquest, before the conquest of Canaan. So Moses flees Egypt. He goes to Midian. Where does he go? Somewhere in the Sinai. He marries Zipporah, who is the daughter of the pagan high priest in Midian. And so Moses, in essence, becomes a desert sheikh at age 40, thereabouts. And he's inculcated into that religion, and he's got all this religious training from different places, earlier part of his life. So when he comes to God in the burning bush, this is just another deity, but this maybe is the first one that spoke to him out of a bush. And he asks, what's your name? Because he wants to know what the name of the deity is, because he believes that will give him a little speculation on my part here. Asking the question usually has a reason. The reason's not stated in the Bible, but he's asking the question. It's not just to say, and God sent me, and his name is... No, this is Moses trying to find out what the name of the deity is, for the reason that most people back then with these spiritual, mystical experiences would ask. He wants to know what kind of control he has. What's his footing with this deity? And God pretty much answers him and says, none of your business. By his answer, you tell him I am. You tell him I am that I am. Now, here's what I was getting to in all of that. And this is, you may have heard me talk about this before. In talking about Zecharia Sitchin and language and translation of language and interpretation of language, I never heard this until just a few years ago with all my seminary training, my Bible college training, all the training I had in ministry. I'd never heard this passage interpreted this way before. The I am that God speaks in the book of Exodus. That is not just a simple I am that I am. That phrase in the Hebrew text is an imported Mesopotamian wordplay that's used in the Hebrew text. Now, that Mesopotamian wordplay, again, without breaking it down into every little jot and tittle of its of its linguistic etymology, that word phrase, I am that I am, came from Mesopotamia. It was a Mesopotamian wordplay, and the wordplay meant, I am that Enki they speak of. And so here, Moses, when he wrote this down, is borrowing text from the Mesopotamian culture. Why did he do that? He borrowed a word phrase, a word play, which means innately, I am that Enki they speak of. Enki, the great creator god of men. And so what Moses is doing, he's borrowing that word play, incorporating it into his story in Hebrew, and saying, I am that I am that creator, I am that God. Literally, I am that Enki they speak of. Now, the connotation is one of asking, was God equating himself with Enki, or was God saying, that God that they speak of, that's really me. I'm the God, not Enki. But he doesn't put that negative in the phrase. The negative is just simply, I am that Enki they're speaking of. So God says, you tell them I am that Enki they speak of. That God, that Enki they know of, that Mesopotamian God who created men before you wrote the book of Genesis, that understanding of God, that's who I am, is what God's telling him. And so that to me is where you look into language and you find out, what does the word translate to be in modern English? Then you decide, what do those words mean in the ancient language in which it was being spoken? And then in context, what would the people listening to that 3,000 years ago have understood that phrase to mean? That's how you interpret language. So back then, when Moses penned that, the people would have understood that phrase to mean, I am that Enki they speak of, because he's using the Mesopotamian wordplay. And that's how it translates. So to me, that's interesting stuff when you come to try to translate what's being said in Scripture. When you look at old language, now I don't have any of this in front of me, so I'm just doing it off the top of my head. I couldn't find any of the stuff. I didn't know I was going to talk about this morning. So I can find that and I can break it. And maybe we'll do a show, upcoming show, where I break this down into its linguistics a little tighter. But that's some interesting stuff, at least as far as I'm concerned. You don't have to believe the faith story of the Bible. The history, I believe, is efficacious. I don't think it was made up history. Now, the story of Moses, I believe Moses existed. I believe he wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. I believe that he was a guy attempting to establish his leadership over Israel. He was a guy who was attempting to establish, and which he accomplished, codifying the Jewish religion. He created Judaism out of whole cloth. He brought in the commandments. He brought in all the rules and regulations. He codified Judaism from the belief system that the people would have been adhering to. Now, keep this in mind as well. There were people that were captive in Egypt, the Israelites, the family of Israel, because you remember, when they first came to Egypt a few hundred years earlier, they came as the family clan of Jacob/Israel. Israel was his other name. There was about 70 of them, and they came and they settled in the Nile Delta with the permission of the Pharaoh because there was famine back home in Canaan, which is today, you can call it Palestine. It's Israel. It's all those. It's the Middle East. And so they came as a family seeking refuge to bring their flocks in and get them fed and watered in the Nile Delta. And they settled there. And there was a city they settled. It was Avaris, which was taken down and rebuilt under Ramses II as Pi-Ramses. And you can go to the ruins of this city today, which is pretty much a cornfield, wheat field, whatever it is they're growing there. And underneath is the city of Pi-Ramses, which is built on the city of Avaris, which is what the Israelites established back in that day. And so that's how they came there. What did they worship? They worshiped Jehovah or Elohim. They worshipped Elohim. And Elohim and Jehovah being two different people, two different gods. So this is who they worshipped. And so they had a form. And so I believe when the Exodus took place, you would have had a lot of Israelites who were maybe not believing in Jehovah, Elohim at all, that they followed the Egyptian way of thinking. This you can tell by simply by reading between the lines of stories like the story of the golden calf. What happens? Moses leads them out. A couple weeks later, they're at, I believe, Serabit el-Khadim, mountain about 40 miles east of the Red Sea in the Sinai. And they're camped there, and Moses goes up in the mountain, and he's gone for 40 days. And it says, and the people came to Aaron, his brother, and started kind of complaining. Where's this guy? Where's Moses? He led us out of Egypt. Now he's been up in the mountain for 40. Nobody even knows if he's alive up there. What are we doing here? And they said to Aaron, amongst probably many other complaints, they said, build us a god that we may worship. And so Aaron gathers up all the gold they had. And you think, slaves? How'd they get gold? Well, this was a slave caste, and I think they probably had gold. I don't think they were slaves in the way that we think of slavery. They were a culture that was sucked up by Egypt, and they were the lower class, the working class, and so on. Some of them probably enslaved. But remember, it says when they left Egypt, they looted Egypt as well. They took all the gold from their neighbors, it said, those who lived near them. And so they had gold, and they made, what did Aaron make? He makes the golden calf. Well, it makes a lot of sense. First of all, the golden calf would have been none other than the Egyptian god Hathor. Hathor, the calf goddess of Egypt. Fertility, happiness. The mountain where they're at, Serabit el-Khadim. And I've been there. The temple's on the top. There's the temple of Ptah and the temple of Hathor. This mountain was the mountain of Hathor. She was the patron goddess of this mountain. And she was also the patron goddess of the miners, because all around this mountain are the copper mines and the turquoise mines, where a lot of, and the Bible actually says during the Exodus, they stopped here and they picked up all the miners along the way that were of Israelite descent, and anybody who wanted to join them. So they build a god honoring Hathor, not Jehovah, not Elohim. This was maybe foreign to a lot of them. So many of these people, if you look at the context, didn't believe any kind of Judaic sort of faith at all. And there was the handful that did. So there you go. That's what my thing is with language and context and understanding what's going on. I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a look at some of your copious amounts of comments here. Let's see. Patch says religion. He says, what did he say? What'd you say, Patch? You made a very profound little statement about what religion was. Boy, are we lied to, he says. Yeah, that's very true. Well, let's go back, and when I find it, I'll come across it. Let's see. Seeing some of your posts here. Electra says, I think Enlil and Enki and Enlil are both bad. I'd like to see your thinking on that. I know Enlil was the chief god, and he conscripted Enki, and Enki chose one of the goddesses with whom to make what they called in the cuneiform text primordial man, to do our work for us. Maybe that's what you're thinking. They raised up, some have theorized that if this is true, maybe it was the primates they took, and they experimented with them and made primordial man. And so primordial man was kind of dumb and not intelligent, did the work for the gods or the Anunnaki. Some have speculated, as has Sitchin, that these Anunnaki gods were really a race, extraterrestrial race, that were here mining resources, and that they used monkey man, primate man, and inbred with him in order to give him some intelligence to do their work for them. That's interesting. Is that what happened? I don't know. It's speculation. Let's see. Moving on. We have Electra says one created man because the Ijiji revolted from doing their dirty work, and the other hated us and wiped us out with the flood. Serpent versus the eagle. Yeah, there is something to that, and that's a light way of looking at. You're describing a very big theory with that, and let's see. Moving on through the comments, we have the spark of divinity, the Holy Spirit within. Oops. Yeah, there's that. Now, that, of course, is where did that come? Did we evolve from lower primate species? Did we have the spark of divinity in us when we were primates? Or is that all bunk? Were we created as humans as we know them today? Were we created with a body, soul, and a spirit? Hence the question. You a dichotomist or a trichotomist? Dichotomy, body and soul, or body and spirit. And trichotomist, body, soul, and spirit. What's the differences there? And so if we evolved from lower species of primate to what we are now, when did the spark of divinity hit us? Does the spark of divinity come with awareness? Being aware? Being awake? Being sentient? Where does the spark of divinity come from? If you believe in humans having the spark of divinity, could humans have then been once primates on a lower level? That's a good question to ask. I've never even thought about that before in those terms. So where did the spark of divinity come from? When did it hit humans? Were humans created as full humans as we know them today, or did we evolve from subspecies? Good question. That's why we always believed, I know in biblical sense, in biblical theology, that the animals were one kind of creation, body and spirit, and that humans were body, soul, and spirit. That we were created differently, that God breathed into his creation the breath of life, and man became a living soul, as Genesis says. So at what point did the Creator breathe into humans the breath of life? So let's see. Susie Q says, I do have divinity, sovereignty, and freedom. The only person that lives in here is me. I guess I'm not giving them any room. I have the Christos in my heart, and that's a state of being. There you go. I love the word efficacious, says Jeannie. I do too. And it's where I first started really using it was in terms of, I believe the Bible has efficacious history. The faith stories, I think, are just that. And I think the faith stories are wrapped up in the history or vice versa in the Bible. So I hear children whining and fighting again out there. So they're always at each other about something or the other. It's usually the little one because, like I've mentioned before, she is the queen of the universe. And so to defy her is to bring down the wrath of the universe. And it's usually the other kids saying something like, I don't know, they're watching a show on TV. And the little one comes in and grabs the remote and changes the channel. Well, I want to watch this. I don't want to watch your show. And it starts a fight. So there you go, parents. I haven't heard my wife's voice yet, so I don't think they've gone up and bothered her yet. Let's see. Delaney says she literally has her own snake staff of Moses. I don't have one of those. So the Bible came from the Sumerian texts. Spot on, Electra. I think that is where Moses drew a lot of his material. Let's see, because remember, if he was in the school of the nobles for the first 40 years of his life, well, probably not for 40 years, but when he was younger in the school of the nobles, he would have learned all these religions. And by the way, there is in the Jewish writings, the Mishnah, the Mikvah, it talks about tradition when Moses fled from Egypt. He didn't go right to Midian and marry Zipporah, the daughter of the high priest. He went south into Ethiopia, and he married a princess there. And he took her with him eventually to Midian in the Sinai. And there is a story, an earlier story of Moses in the Jewish writings that says when he was in Egypt, he was also a military general and that he subdued a rebellion in Ethiopia. And he made himself the king of Ethiopia. And Pharaoh got word of this, and Pharaoh said, I sent you down there to subdue a rebellion. You're not taking the throne for yourself. That's not your prize. It's mine. Come on back home. And so he relinquishes it, but he kills the king, and the queen hates him for this. Could this be where he met the princess, the daughter in Ethiopia? And he goes back to fetch her and to marry her. Maybe could not, as I'm speculating, could not establish his throne in Ethiopia, so he runs to Midian with her. And then he marries his second wife, Zipporah, which is not mentioned in the Old Testament, but it's mentioned in Jewish writings. Let's see. Jeannie Griffith says, I scrolled by it. Where'd it go? Darn it. I lost it. It zipped past me. Oh, she says the Christos is actually the CFS, the cerebral spinal fluid, which is also the kundalini that flows through our out the cord. But I get what you mean. Your heart mind is controlled by the hippocampus. I don't know about that, Jeannie. The Christos, I think that we can attribute those things to bodily functions. Maybe that is in the Gnostic mysteries, that this is what that meant. Is there a Christos that is outside the body that was actually a person? Let's see. Kelly says patterns of evidence. Good doc, by the way. I watched it 4 times already about the Exodus. Yeah, patterns of evidence. That was done by David Roll, Dr. David Roll. And he and I are not on good speaking terms. I don't know why that fell apart. I would say my experience with him was he's one of those scholars who doesn't like to be questioned on because he believes he's done all the study. And he has done a lot of study. I disagree with him on the Exodus and the story of Moses. John Ward and I actually asked David Roll to write the foreword for our book on the Exodus. And we sent him a manuscript, and he came back about a week later and said, I can't write this. He says, you're simply wrong. So he's taken us to task ever since because he disagrees with my theory. Well, I disagree with his theory, but there are a lot of things he gets right. So I'm not saying he's just like Sitchin. I'm not saying he's wrong-headed on everything. I'm saying I disagreed with him on some points. So anyway, moving on from that. Kundalini, risen to the 7th, is the caduceus stolen by the medical community. Yep, it's the serpent on the rod. Gaze upon it and you will not die, is the symbol of the true healers. Yep, that was the caduceus came from the serpent on the pole, the brazen serpent, which is called the Nekoshte in the Hebrew, the brazen serpent. Now, Nekosh was the serpent in the Garden of Eden who tempted Eve. His name, he was called Nekosh in the Hebrew scripture. The Nekoshte is the serpent raised on a pole that would heal you. So it's interesting. Why would Moses use a symbol of the Nekosh, who was the great tempter in the Garden of Eden, as a symbol of healing for the children of Israel in the desert? I think that's very telling all by itself, because I think there's more to that whole serpent thing in the Garden of Eden story. So Audrey talks about patterns of evidence. She says David's a dear friend. Yeah. Scotty and I have differing opinions on the Exodus, but both are compelling. I've noticed the most I've heard from David Roll in the last few years has been in somebody else's political texts, political posts, where I disagree with them on politics, presidential stuff, politics, and so on. And David Roll comes in and calls me a fool and an idiot. And I tell him basically, #shut up. So I'm pretty sure he has that opinion of what I have to say because he doesn't like me for other reasons. because we disagreed on the Exodus. I deigned to disagree with him. Even though I like what David Rohl brings to the table in general. Let me put that there. So, and I told him, you're a Brit living in Spain. Tell me you know more about American politics than I do. Moving on. Let's see. I see a lot of conversation. It's a puzzle, says a lecturer. We have all the pieces. Truth is putting it together. There's nothing truer said than that. Let's see. Kelly asks, is that another name for Lilith? Lilith. I'm trying to see what came back from that. Let's see. Don't forget to hit the button, you awesome people. That's very true. Like the like button. Let's see. I feel in my spirit that Moses was a true person. I know he was, Delaney. I don't think there's any reason to doubt that he was a real guy. And I think he was that guy right there over my shoulder, as I've talked about many times. So let's see. Heather White's doing baby things. Good to see you, Heather. Heather Lass. And I'm glad you got to see me on the big screen. And I've got my small child wandering in. What do you need, child? Scissors? Yeah, there's like 5 pair out there. They're not clean. Okay, don't open the dishwasher. It's still running. You be careful up there. And if you take mom's scissors, put them back when you're done, okay? Oh, well. All right. I'm taking these tiny ones. Fantastic. Just your size. See you later. The looks I get. All right. So, delete these emails, Scotty. What emails, Teresa? So Lilith was awake. She knew the truth. Yes. An enlightened soul sent to the world to influence man, asks Matt. Lilith was Adam's first wife. Yep, see the Nag Hammadi. You can see a whole lot about Lilith in Jewish texts. She's known by many names, says Kelly. All right. So there we go. That's about all I want to talk about that stuff today. Although I could say a lot more. You know me. It's 10:03 my time, 11:03 out east. We've been here for an hour. Why don't we do a couple of tarot readings? So, and by the way, in the title of this, when I say communion, I don't want anybody to I call this what? Communion, Camaraderie, and Cards on Sunday morning, and subtitled. Now, when I do that, I'm not talking about communion as in church communion. I don't want anybody to confuse that. I'm talking about communing with each other. So Audrey could use a read. Let's do hers. I see you first. Here we go. Let's read Audrey, and then I'll look for somebody else after I do Audrey's. Here we go. Audrey, I'm going to shuffle up for you, and we'll take it from there. 3 times.
These are dirty now. Should I put them in the sink? They're dirty.
Yep. And one more time. It's the beauty of doing my live shows. You get to see my kids wandering in and out all the time. So, Audrey, I've shuffled for you. If you were here, I'd have you put your hand to the deck and cut it for me. I'm doing that on your behalf right now. And here we go. All right, Audrey, I'm going to do 3 cards for you, past, present, future. So let me pull the cards off, show you what they are, then we'll come back and read them. Your first card is the Wheel of Fortune. What you lose on the downturn, you gain on the upswing. It's the basic meaning. That's your current. Justice is in your recent past. And your near future that you're moving into is the 10 of Coins. 10 of Coins being material things, financial things, and all of that. So your first card, again, is the Wheel of Fortune. Now, the Wheel of Fortune is a card that basically says the phrase I learned with this, and I already mentioned it, what you lose on the downswing, you gain on the upturn of the wheel. and that life is cyclical. Things keep cycling around. If you've gone through a bad patch for a while, you're on the upswing side. If things have been up and looking good, you might be on the downswing. And so all of this is the actions of your past. They seed your future success. So to make progress, you have to accept that changes are always coming. There's always change. It could be in that negative sense that you say, oh, now the other shoe's going to drop kind of thing. That's really the great wheel of fortune, the circle of life, if you will. There's a beneficial change that's approaching you. But keep in mind that luck isn't something that you control. That's out there. You control what happens to you. Luck is the thing that comes in as a random element. And the future is going to yield an opportunity for you to change your path toward personal growth and happiness. You have to be ready to change your way of doing things, to change your way of thinking, because whether or not your actions bring success, they repeat or represent this whole beneficial change that's coming. And so the Wheel of Fortune it stands for external luck. It stands for changes. It stands for a new direction in your life. It also shows the ups and the downs. The overall feel of the card is very positive. It's one that's indicating positive changes for the better taking place in your current right now. So where things have dropped off, things are rising up. In other words, the great wheel of life. Justice is the card of your recent past. Now, this is a card that speaks to perhaps the legal system, things that are happening to you on a legal or what's another word for legal? On a nuts and bolts of life kind of level, but mostly in the legal capacity. And it speaks to justice being served as neutral. It's not good or bad. Justice is what justice is. And so the idea with this card is that you're balancing your emotions, the whole scale of justice. You're bringing balance to things and balance to your emotions. It's going to pay off to bring you harmony in your business relationships, your personal relationships, and all of this. The confusion of your life can be overcome if you turn to the balance of justice, looking for what's right. I would say it's the being awake, being aware, and being in the now. You're going to receive some gift or an advice that's it's like a debt being repaid to you. It could be the debt of things you have invested yourself in. Now will show some payoff again. And so when all's said and done, you're going to receive the outcome that you're looking for. It's your character is going to be justified. You have to maintain your integrity. Strive to balance yourself for justice to work right for you. The justice card, it's all about karma. It's all about fairness. It's about balance in different areas of your life and different affairs of your life. It doesn't suggest an outcome that's either for or against you, but accountability, dignity, integrity are all linked to the presence of this card. And this is your past. This is the energy you've been in, is that you are being gauged by your character and your integrity. These are the things that bring balance to whatever your situation is right now. And this is where you experience then the Wheel of Fortune, where this justice has dropped you off in your present, the Wheel of Fortune, the life turning, things changing, and things changing for the good after they've been a little wearying or a little rugged. And so what that brings you to is the card of your near future. And I say of the near future card that these are things that are already happening. They're already in play. So it's not predicting the future. It's saying this is the energy that's taking place because you're already shifting into this. And it's coins. It has to do with the material well-being. It said it's a card that says you've been prosperous and established a secure base by your ability to spend your money wisely or to earn it smartly, to take care of yourself. You're going to receive a reward that's partially due to your efforts, but also due to your position in the world, in the family, the sphere of influence that you have. Carefully evaluate your own merits in accordance to this. There's an unexpected solution to a difficult financial problem that's going to hit you right away. It's coming very quickly. The projects, the ideas you're currently working on will be of benefit to you. This is patience in the presence of stability. It's prosperity. It's overall fairly good fortune is what this card stands for. Pardon me. And this could all be due to having positive, close relationships or tight-knit families or a network that works for you. It's an inheritance or a discovery of treasure or something being put in your lap that you did not expect to have happen. This could be related to job hunting. It could be related to business and things like that. These things might be awaiting you, so it's a very positive outcome. So overall, keep yourself balanced. The Wheel of Fortune balances for you. What you've lost on the downturn, you'll gain on the upswing. And it looks like you're going into some pretty good energy as a result of that. So there you go. That's what I got. I don't know if this predicts that you got the job or that it predicts great money. It predicts that the atmosphere is there, that what you've worked on is leading to this, and the Wheel of Fortune is turning in your favor. Boom. That's all you got to know. Let me know how that turns out. Pantsless for sure, says Matt. There you are. Hey, folks, I'm going to take a 2-minute break. Hang on. Not going anywhere. Mic is open. Everything's live still. I got to step away. Be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. No, I don't need to hear any bells.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
Your phone was sitting by the door, and I asked Mom if it would be fine if I watched on it because we were in the office, and she said yeah. So is it okay with you?
Sure, that's fine with me. Yes, good morning.
I'm gonna have a pop.
Is Mom up yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
She doesn't feel that good.
Okay.
But can I have a pop too?
Yeah, I already answered. Yeah. We'll make something to eat when I'm done with radio. Not too long. Okay, I'm back. What are you guys skulking about doing while I was gone? Behind my back. All right. Heather is next. Heather White. Thank you, Susie Q, for keeping track of that for me. Heather, how you doing? Heather's a good friend of mine. We've never met face to face. I'd like to remedy that someday. She's over in Glasgow or the outskirts of Glasgow. I don't know exactly where she lives in Glasgow, but a Scottish lass. And I bumped into her online the first time back when I was the editor-in-chief of TAPS Paramag. So that's back in 2009 or 10. So I've known Heather for a good 10 years. So here we go, Heather. I don't think I've ever done a reading for you before in all the time I've known you. So Heather, if you're there, listen up. I'm going to shuffle for you now. Here we go. And we're just going to rearrange these cards and trust that whoever is in charge of this kind of stuff out there is rearranging these cards for you. Okay, one more time for Heather. Here we go. All right, Heather, if you were here, I'd have you put your hand to the deck and cut it for me. So I'm going to cut this on your behalf. Here we go. All right, Heather. Let's see what Source has to say to you. There you go. I see you there. Here we are. First card. This is your current situation. It is the Six of Coins. Coins being that suit of material well-being. Then we've got, in the recent past, the Page of Wands. Wands having to do with your emotional makeup, what you bring to the table. And then you got the Nine of Cups showing up in your near future. All right. Let's take a look at what these are about. Coins. This has to do, I like to say, less with prosperity, and it has to do with financial things, but it's the nuts and bolts of life. It's those things that make your material well-being work for you. And this is the six. And the six it shows a woman, she's counting coins on the table, stacking them up. And she's got a whole pile of coins here, and she's got a bunch of hands reaching out to her. And the idea with this card, this is your current. It's talking about your fair consideration of other people in the past is going to lead to your success in the present. Your fervor for life, so to speak, to use that kind of language, your faith in your own talents is going to be renewed. And the joy of being able to help someone in need is going to illuminate the bigger picture for you. And keep in mind that kindness of others is out of your control, but you're totally capable, the kindness of others, not to others. Their kindness to you is out of your control, but you're totally capable of bestowing favors on other people. And if you seek out a favor, it may do well to give freely to others. And this card stands for success. It stands for prosperity, generosity. It suggests financially helping other people. And how can you financially help other people if you don't have it to give? So the idea is a building up of something. You're giving donations, selflessly giving to charity, or helping people who need something from you. There's this positive favor, and there's an overall sense of really of good fortune and happy payoffs in the future for you. This card in your current says you are in the position, or you're being lined up to be in the position to be somebody who has the ability to give to others. When you see the hands being extended here, it's not people going, gimme, gimme, gimme of what you got. It's you saying, I've got something here, a little extra here. I've got something to work with. Give me your hand so I can put a coin in it. It's all on you. It's your action and what you're doing. Now, I don't know what your financial situation is right now. I know you're working on some fantastic things. I know you're an incredible artist, and I know you've been doing gallery shows. I know that you're doing the stuff with walls and things like that. I don't know what all exactly you do, mudding walls and things like that. And I don't know if you do artistic and creative stuff with that, but this could mean that this is the kind of thing that's paying off, or it could have nothing to do with that. It could be that somehow you're being increased. You're being given increase. So you got a few stacks of coins on the table you can count. So much so that you've got friends who might need your help. You go, hey, give me your hand. Here's a little something. It's the idea of sharing what you have, not being miserly with what you have, but realizing that there were times where you needed people to share with you. And so you now have that ability to share with others. That's not a bad position to be in. It's a very positive card. It's one that says in your current, you're starting to see either you're experiencing having been built up a bit financially, where you're being given more, or you have that the seeds of that is starting to come to fruition for you, and you're going, hey, wait a minute, this is paying off for me a little bit. This is built on the Page of Wands, which is in your recent past. And Wands is that suit of your emotional makeup. It's the stuff that you bring to the table, the stuff that makes you go. I always say it's what makes you look in the mirror in the morning and go, damn it, I'm happy to be alive and I got things to do today. It's all about, it's that being in the know, in the present, in the now. And in your recent past, it talks about the prospects of recent work has energized you to seek financial gains or to begin new creative projects. There's good news coming in your recent past, and it's going to infuse joy into your life. There's a new phase of your life that's going to begin, is what this is talking about, after you receive this intense flash of inspiration. And this could be some of the things that you've been dealing with. I've seen you involved in, not knowing your whole situation intimately. Some of the things you're involved in might be the source of all this. And the inspiration is going to be brought about by good news that you're getting or have gotten by now, because this is in your recent past. It's progress in what you're undertaking, it's moving forward, career advancement type of stuff. And the Page of Wands is energetic. It's got the zeal of youthful energy and vigor. It's lively. It's fearless. It's a fearless youth who possesses a can do attitude and a hands on approach. And that's something from the little I know of you. I don't like to extrapolate lots of information, but you're a hands on type of person. You're the person who's in there doing the things you need to do to get yourself ahead, as opposed to just relying on somebody to, oh, give me that job at the coffee shop. You're somebody who's pushing yourself ahead. And this is a card that speaks to the payoff, to the overcoming of where you were to being where you want to be. It overcomes fears, starts new projects. It uses your skill and your courage to get there. So this is very positive. And this is the energy from your past that's dumped you off into the present that says, oh, you might be getting a little gain here, enough so that you remember those who helped you and you help others. In other words, that could look as simple as, I don't know if this is your situation, but in what you're doing, if you got to hire an assistant to help you, it could take that form. It could be something totally different than that, but it's something where you are giving of what you have, the increase that you've gotten, to help someone else out. And all of this leads you into what's already starting to take place for you, and that is the Nine of Cups. And cups are our passions. There are relationships. They're the things we sink our passionate selves into. This is different than the emotional makeup. And the cups usually represents opportunity. It represents relationship. It represents all these good things that come to us. And this is the idea that the source of true happiness in your life, Heather, is your soul attaining a peaceful balance. When do we not have peaceful balance in our souls? It's when we're struggling with things and trying to make things happen, and we let the things of life tear us down. This is saying you're attaining the balance. The efforts that you've spent are going to bring you the reward that you want. And it's all about staying strong, staying true, keep working to what you are. Your emotional, your material well-being are at hand here. Look to your friends for advice and support, but recognize that it's only in you and your efforts that you find the fulfillment of all of this stuff. So the goal you've set for yourself is maybe down the road a little ways. That's what this card says. So stay true to your desires. You're going to reach the destination that you're looking for. And balance your heart and mind to find a true calling for yourself. This is a card that shows feelings of joy, satisfaction, pleasure, overall contentment. Its presence in the reading is indicative of a bright future that's brimming with good times, bliss, a period of your wishes being granted. It's a very positive yes type of a card that you're entering into, and it's where all your cups are being filled, is the idea. Now, the thing to keep in mind with this is that this might not mean today, might not mean tomorrow. It might mean that all this energy, this building in the past, your emotional investment, the having a little extra here so you can help those who've helped you, that getting to the place where all this fulfillment takes place might be a ways down the road yet. It might not be right on top of you, but it's coming if you keep doing what you're doing. So it's that again. I have to reiterate that being awake, being aware, being in the now with all of this. If you're in the now, you don't worry about the past. You don't worry about where you're going. You focus on what you need to be now. And I think in the things that you are undertaking, you focus on where you are, and what's to come is going to come by itself because you've created that energy. You've created that atmosphere to make that happen. All right. I hope that's meaningful. I hope it means something to your situation. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. Let's see. Heather says amazing. I hope that means that was helpful for you, that it was spot on. So there you go, Heather. Oh, it says you've been giving a lot recently to people. There you go. There you go. You seem to be someone to me that we used to talk a lot, and we talk every now and then now. You're over there in Scotland. I follow your artwork. I follow the projects you're working on, the career path you're choosing. I've seen that, and I've commented on it. And I think if those are the things that are at the core of this, I think you're doing it the right way, is what this is telling you. And you just keep at it. You keep yourself motivated and yourself going. So there you go. All right. Let's see. Heather says that was a great read. Thanks so much. You're so welcome, Heather. All right. We got anybody else? I can do one or two more. Here it's 10:30. I think we could go for a little bit. Susie Q wants one. Here we go, Susie Q. Okay, shuffling up for Susie Q. Here we go. And Susie, thank you for minding the store a bit here and keeping me in line with who was next and things like that. I really appreciate that. All right, Susie Q. Again, the shuffling. I don't believe there's a big mystery to it, but I do believe something out there manages the shuffle of the deck. All right. If it can keep atoms from blowing themselves apart, it can shuffle a deck of cards. Kind of the way I see it. All right, Susie. If you were here, I'd have you cut the deck. Let me do that for you. Boom. 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 And boom, boom. Here we go. You ready? 3 cards for Susie Q. Your current situation, Susie. The Ace of Wands. Having to do with your emotional makeup. Your recent past is the 9 of Coins. Material things. And the Page of Coins. Material things again in your near future. Now, the Page of Wands. Wands, again, is that suit of things that are your emotional makeup. The things that keep you going. The things that make you happy to be alive. It keeps you in the moment, so to speak. And the Ace, this is the first card in the deck, represented in this deck by the angels, messengers of God. God delivering a message, standing by an open door. In your current, it says, re-examine your past goals. Are you maybe limiting yourself, is the idea. Are you one of those people, Susie, who will approach things and say, I could do that, but I'm not good enough at that, or there's somebody who does it so much better, yada yada. We use all those excuses to keep ourselves blindfolded. This is one that says, re-examine your past goals, the places you want to get, and realize that maybe you are the only one who's limiting yourself because you got what it takes, and the open door is there. Presented, there's an inspiration that's building inside of you in the current. It's going to vent its energy destructively if you don't use it creatively. It's like, okay, lame example, but it's like blunting a sneeze. You got this energy growing, and you sneeze. And it's like, oh my God, that was amazing. Whew. After the sneeze. But what if you blunt it all and you stop it from happening? you get an internal explosion. So, lame example, but if you're blunting that creative energy, that inspiration to do something, that that energy is going to vent itself in a destructive way or in a different way than you want to have happen. So you have to use it, ride it creatively. There's a new beginning at hand. These angels all represent new beginnings, these aces. It might take the form of a new phase of life, a new enterprise that you enter into, a new project, a new source of inspiration, whatever it is. Something new is at hand. And as I've always said to these angels, it's like they're standing before open doors. Imagine the picture that's in my mind as you see a beautiful Edenic looking like garden or space that's gorgeous, beautiful sky, birds singing, and out of nowhere there's this doorway that's leads to nowhere, just standing there. And the angel opens up that doorway and there's something else on the other side of that. And it's saying, there you go. There is your opportunity. Angel can't push you through it. Only you can walk yourself through the door. Saying, you're at the threshold, now walk through. To succeed, you have to think clearly. You have to plan ahead. There's a void right here in your life that's waiting to be filled. And we've all got those. But this is a card that says there's that God-shaped vacuum that only God can fill, by way of illustrating that point. There's a vacuum that can only be filled with the right things. And there's that void, and you're waiting for it to be filled up. And it's your duty to fill it, not somebody else's. You have to find the right things to fill that. So prepare for a transformation to take place, a transformative experience by filling this void with something to positively influence new beginnings in your life. So in your current, you've got the open door, opportunity, new beginnings, new direction you can take, but the only thing holding you back is you. So you've got to stop you from holding you back, and you've got to take that step forward. You have to fill the void. Stop second guessing and start being awake. I have to keep repeating this. Be awake and be aware of who you are. Be in the now, in the moment. Understand where you're going. Take the hawk's view, hovering above, where it sees no boundaries, no borders. If you remember The Once and Future King, that's where that comes to my mind from all of a sudden in your reading, where Merlin turns the young Arthur into a bird, into a hawk, and he has him fly, and he says, "What do you see?" And he says, "I see the beautiful, the rivers, the forests, the pasture lands." And he says, "What else do you see?" He says, "I see that other kingdom over there, but I don't see the borders. There's no borders from up here." This is the way you're to say. I get a chill saying that. It's looking at things from that heightened perspective in order to forward yourself. So this is a card about being inventive, being creative, suggests some sort of passionate union that's a positive new beginning for you, or the birth of something very powerful in your life. And it's inspiring you to come into your life. It could be a new project or something creative that you'll be taking on. So it's all this great energy right here for you, Susie Q. And it's built on the 9 of coins. Now, if you see, we've had this card a couple of times in the past, and the 9 of coins shows a woman sitting in a beautiful garden. Funny, she's got a hawk on her arm, a hooded hawk. And she's got the beautiful music playing. What else is in here? Just beautiful flowers growing around her, all of this stuff. But she's in a garden. She's in a walled garden. This is your recent past. Things have been okay. Things have been good. Prosperity's all right. All the things you've earned is by your experience and your achievements. And the rewards of a recent project might not yet be obvious, but you're experiencing the abundance of that you have in your recent past. This is the card of where you're coming out of. And the solution you've been seeking is going to arrive. It's going to relieve you of stress associated with your problem. And the problem here is doing okay, living in that beautiful garden, but it's a walled garden. And anything with a wall, it could be a prison easily. And so it's you kicking down the wall or poking a hole through the wall or digging under the wall or scrambling over the top of it to find out what's out there. It's the new challenges that are waiting to dispel your feelings of dissatisfaction. You may have had abundance. You may have been doing okay financially and all that, but you're in the walled garden and you know you got more to give. The void you might be experiencing, the void from the heart that we talked about in the first card, will be remedied not by the challenges, but by the rewards that you help bring into being by escaping from the walled garden. And so this stands for wealth. It stands for financial security. It could mean finally being rewarded for all the efforts you've put into things, business or important projects in your life. The presence of this card could mean financial and or personal independence for you. It's a very positive card. It's in your recent past, and it's the energy that's dropped you into your present with this Ace of Cards, giving you the open door to move forward. And where this is leading you is the Page of Coins. And this page, he's wearing what would be in archaic times the kind of the scholar's hat. It's not the little square mortar hat board that they wear, but this has to do with expanding your knowledge. This is a card that says you're going to be rewarded for the work you have put in the near future now. This is what's coming on. And they use the scholar because they're using the example in the card. It's like getting the diploma after the years of study and work to earn your degree. It's idealisms and ambitions of your past are the things that are going to start bringing success to your newest ideas. You are in the process of you're developing either let's say it's as small as a hobby, as great as an occupation. You're in the process of building these things, of trying to create this for yourself. And there's news coming that portends the arrival of change, the arrival of recognition, of degree. And although it's not immediate, this is to prepare to evaluate the risks and the rewards for the new ventures that you want to set out on. You're going to gain insight into your future. You're going to remain attentive and studious of the signs around you. Everything you need to know is available right now by drawing on what you already know. If you take the time to understand it for later. And so this represents a skillful, attentive, studious person who's both self-disciplined as well as a go-getter. Someone who is getting indication of some sort of promotion, acquiring a new enjoyable hobby or project work in the near future. And the overall mood of this card suggests that it's very positive. And if you're asking questions, it's kind of a yes answer is coming back because you're going to be rewarded for the diligence and the work that you put in. So that's what I see. There's a lot of positive, you've done positive readings today. This is really positive stuff. So your past, get out of the walled garden, move yourself forward. Your present, the Ace of Wands, use your creative energy, go through the open door. The opportunities are there, and you're going to be rewarded like getting a degree after years of study. So there you go. I hope that that works for you. I hope that means something. So, yeah, because we're positive people, bro, says Matt. There it is. And as Rocky would say, we're positive people, bitches. So there you go. All right. Let's see what time we got. It's 10:40. 10:40. So let's see. Barry Child says garlic, honey, pepper is a booster for your health, Roger. Use them to clear out the lungs. Garlic and honey and pepper. That's interesting. I would think I like garlic, but I wouldn't eat it raw. I like pepper, but I wouldn't eat it raw. You mix those things into honey? That's kind of interesting. So maybe that'll work. Let's see. Baroness January is next. Let's do Baroness January. I'm not sure if I can do another one after this. Let's see where this one goes, what time we're at. We'll try this. Let me put in a little advertisement for myself. I do tarot reading. It's one of the things I do for a living. One of the things. So if you would like a tarot reading, I can do a 5-card and a 10-card reading for respectively $45 and $85. They take about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how the reading goes, respectively. So you can go over to my website, scottallenroberts.com, click on the tarot link, and there's 2 PayPal links. Make a payment. We'll get you on the schedule. It'll ask for your information so I can contact you. Or you can just go here on my YouTube channel. Just go up to the my main header on the main page. It'll say donate to further my research. You can put in a $45 or an $85 payment. I'll know what it's for. Give me your information. We'll connect. And that's it. So there you go. You're welcome, Susie Q. Sorry you have to leave early, Kelly. Have a fun day. Here we go. All right. Thank you, Audrey. Here we go, Baroness. All right. 2 more times for Baroness. To me, this just rearranges the cards a bit. I'm a horrible shuffler. Or my cards are worn out. I've had these for over 10 years. I've been using this deck. So here we go. I'm used to it. The deck. There we go. All right, Baroness, if you were here, I would have you put your hand to the deck and cut it. Put a little bit of your energy into it. So I'm going to do that for you. And here we go. All right. All right, Baroness, here you go. Here's your first card. This is your current circumstances. The 10 of Wands. Wands, again, being your emotional makeup. This is a card of feeling overburdened. And we'll get to that. Card of your recent past is the King of Cups. Royal face cards like the Kings and Queens can be specific people in your life or you exhibiting the energy of a king. And the outcome is the 4 of Coins. All right. Let's get into this. There's some interesting stuff that pops into my mind about the King of Cups. But the 10 of Wands, let's start there. This is your current situation. 10 of Wands. Again, Wands, your emotional makeup. Those things that drive you in life. The things that make you go. There's red in all the wands, and it's supposed to represent fire, the exuberance and the energy of youth, the exuberance and energy of new ideas and creative ideas. And so this is a card that says the strengths that you've developed over the years of struggle are going to lead you to the solution of your current problem. There's something going on that's not defined by this, but it's talking about the energy around it. The negativity that you've recently let go of is going to allow you to form a new philosophy of life. This is a card about bearing down, seeing the challenges through to the end. If you've been disconnected from someone close to you, expect an opportunity to reconnect. It's that kind of an energy. And by focusing your energy in one direction, consolidating your efforts, it's going to make success that much easier to achieve. So you're going to have the chance to achieve desires, but you have to first reach your lofty goals. And that's the problem, the things that have been holding you back, the burdens that you carry to get to the goal. This is a card that's associated with feeling an intense pressure, being overburdened in some area of your life. Feelings of being trapped, maybe, oppressed, having no control over your circumstances. That's what this card represents. In the card, it shows a woman and she's carrying a big stack of sticks that represents burdens, baggage, things that you have to carry. In the older decks, it shows a guy and around him are all these bags of luggage that he's trying to carry up the road, and way in the distance is the castle, his goal. But he's not going to make the goal trying to carry all this stuff by himself. And so he's so overburdened that he needs to divest himself of some of the load in order to carry on. And by divesting, it's either you can distribute the load, find people to delegate to that help you carry the load, they take some of that on for you, or it's getting rid of some of the load. Now, if you apply this to baggage, it might be some of the things that are burdening you, that are holding you back and keeping you down, are things you got to let go of. So let go. It's keeping you, it's holding you in the past. It's holding you where you don't want to be anymore. It's preventing you from moving forward. If this were a relationship, I could honestly say it could be there is somebody that's holding you back, the baggage of hurts and distresses and problems could be holding you back. And it's either renewing that relationship or divesting yourself of that relationship. In business, same thing. Something holding you back, and you have to move away from it. If it's just yourself, it's what are the things inside yourself that you are hanging on to and trying to make it to your goal, but you're dragging all this shit with you, this burden, and you've got to let it go. You got to drop it. You got to divest yourself of it. Lighten the load to make the goal. So that's what this card is all about. In your current, if you haven't recognized it already, this is a card that's telling you recognize, be awake, be aware, be in the now, know the things that hold you back, and get rid of them. And it's that easy sometimes. There may be entanglements. There may be stuff. There's some of you who are listening that could probably say, I can know of all kinds of entanglements I can't unentangle myself from. Yeah, you can. Sometimes things that seem very complicated are really very easy. They just require some dramatic steps. Sometimes it's small stuff. So, Baroness, this card is saying you're carrying a heavy load. It's burdensome on your heart, on your mind, and you got to find a way to lighten the load, or you're not going to make it to where you want to be. It's going to hold you back. All right? Now, there's a card here, the King of Cups. The King of Cups represents either a man you're going to recognize in your current sphere of influence, or it's all about you internally. And this is all about a concern from your past revisits you. If you've been in need of help, it might be a good idea to seek professional guidance right now. Seek some good help in something. How to deal with this. Someone who's greatly capable of aiding you could appear in your life. Take their advice. Don't hesitate to seek help and support. Now, this is in your past. This has already happened to you. You may have accepted that help, or you may have turned your back on that help, but the help was there. So in order to bring about a state of peacefulness, you got to seek advice. You're not going to find balance on your own. So you have to seek out a powerful ally to guide you. That's not saying you don't have capabilities. It's saying that sometimes we're built to rely on people who know, rely on people who help. Perhaps this is the person that would help, that has helped identify the baggage, the things that are keeping you back. King of Cups is compassionate. He's warm. He's gentle. He's the voice of reason. He's an authoritative man with a strong, intuitive, vast spiritual knowledge. And this card represents being able to make decisions by channeling experiences and being able to give good, helpful advice. It's not a positive or a negative card by nature. Now, one thing I learned about this particular king a long time ago, the King of Cups is someone who can offer you very good things, be very good things, but at the same time, he is someone who is pained very deeply. He's been wounded deeply. And he's either somebody you have to deal with or it's yourself expressing this knowledge. This king has a vast amount of knowledge to offer, but he's been wounded deeply. And recognizing his wounds and where his advice comes from could be something that you have to look into and understand. And if this king is being represented in you, the archetypical energy of this king, it's saying you've got the wherewithal and the answers and all and the ability, but there's a deep wound that needs tending to. So look to that. That's your recent past that leads you into realizing I'm carrying too much stuff. I got to lighten my load. Now, where's this going to lead you? This is going to lead you to a very different card. It's again, now this is in the suit of coins, and it has to do with your financial well-being, your material well-being, or the nuts and bolts of life. I like to say when it doesn't deal specifically with finance, it deals with the things that make life work on the nuts and bolts level. It's your ability for hard work, your dedication is going to bring you the material success you need. It's a recent trade. It's a proposition, a commercial venture. It's something you're entering into that brings a deeper significance to your life. This is out in the future. This is coming. This is where you're heading. If you note the pains and the wounds, if you seek the good counsel, if you lighten your load so you can move forward. Sometimes we can negate the good things in the future by not doing the things necessary to get there. And so you're going to receive financial rewards, according to this card, for the efforts that you've shown. You're going to triumph, but the victory is hollow if you only see it as a monetary gain. There has to be gains on other levels that this is speaking to. To maintain your financial security and avoid excess, and to stick to your strengths and your reliability, your resourcefulness, that's what you have to fall back on. You have to achieve leadership, power, and wealth, but only through great effort, great sacrifice. Sometimes the loads we carry, we're like, I want my load, I want my stuff. I don't know how it exists without that to fall back. This is saying it could be a painful sacrifice. It could be something you have to cut off and stop in order to move forward. So this card stands for security, it's stability, and the presence of elemental balance in your heart and your mind. It suggests being smart and frugal with what you have, remaining on a strict budget, but with the security of only positive outcomes, and take that out of the financial and say, you got to stick to your emotional budget. You have to stick to your positive outcomes. And you have to stick to the things that bring your positive outcomes. And it's going to require tenacity on your part. It's going to require moving ahead. So you got some good things out there in store for you. They haven't happened yet. You can totally turn that button off if you don't lighten the load. So the big message here is seek good advice. Realize what your wounds are. Realize what to let go of, what to divest yourself of so you can move forward. Hope that helps. Hope that's meaningful. All right. And everybody, I think that's the last reading I'll do for today. It's already 5 minutes to 11 here, which is almost noon on your end of the world, if you're out east. So spot on. Good to hear, Baroness. So be sure you do that. That's the big thing we all have in life, isn't it? We've all got our baggage. We've all got our garbage. We all bring that to the table. Push it away. Get rid of it. Don't let it. Take it out to the street and leave it on the curb and move on is the idea. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Remember, you can come and get a full reading from me anytime, anyone. Just go and sign up and we'll get you on the schedule. And boy, that's all I got other than saying this week, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Left Coast time. Every night this week for 1 hour, I do my broadcast, the Intrepid Radio program. It's on the Odyssey Radio Network for audio. That's ODYSY1.com. And you can go over there and you can find all the places that they broadcast my show. There's terrestrial stations around that pick it up as well. And also join me here for the live video stream. And that's it. That's all I got for today. Thanks for being here. Thanks for giving me your time. We've been together for 2 hours, shy of 2.5 minutes right now. So thanks for your time and being here. I appreciate you all. And I'll see you again next Sunday. But hopefully first, I'll see you this week in my programs. Come on over and enjoy it. Hang with the other people in the chat room. And that's it. And if you're not already, like Audrey just says, like my page and subscribe. Hit the little bell and subscribe. So Roger Rabbit, I didn't see you and say hi to you today. I see you there. Have a great day yourself, brother. And all of you, take care. We'll see you next time.